Welcome to Buffalo After Dark, everybody. It's your Wednesday night uncensored, unfiltered, and unafraid sports show. You still up? This episode of Buffalo After Dark starts now. Welcome aboard to Buffalo After Dark, everybody. It is Wednesday night, February 8th, and we are actually only 1 week, or actually we're only a couple of days away from the Super Bowl. But, of course, it's the two of us as usual. Bob, how's it going?
Good. How are you feeling this week?
A lot better than last week. That stomach bug was nasty.
Yeah, I heard you had a stomach virus.
Yeah, and it was not pleasant, so I will say that. But no, it's nice to be back this week, and I know we got a lot of stuff we want to talk about, so of course, let's just jump right into it. We've got the hour, we'll make it count. If you want to call us, 929-205-6099, we'll get you on the air, and of course, we have the Facebook chat up and running, and you can join us on Zoom. Real quick, first thing I wanted to let you know about is our friend sophiatough and the Laborde family are doing really well. From what I understand, her family put this out earlier today, but her scans went exactly as what they wanted it to be, so our friend's doing really good, and definitely glad to hear that from them. So it was really cool news today. We still have some stuff we're going to send out to them as well, and basically from there, of course, if any of you guys do want to donate to their GoFundMe, we'll have that information on the page. But certainly, good family, great news to hear today.
Absolutely. Hashtag sophiatough.
Yes, 100%. So with that, we just wanted to make that mention, but let's get right into it. A lot of stuff happening in hockey. One of the biggest things that came out is Dylan Cozens got the 7-year extension, and then I know down on the island by you, Bo Horvat got that extension.
Yeah. I don't know which one to begin with, because I think both of them deserve a little bit of a mentioning in the storylines, I guess you could say. I mean, for a better lack of word. Let's go with Bo Horvat, because I think that one had a little more twist to it, if you will. Mm-hmm. So everybody knows before the All-Star break that Bo Horvat got traded to the Islanders for a haul, which was Anthony Beauvillier, Artur Ratu, which I absolutely hated that the Islanders traded him, and a conditional first-round pick in this year's draft. But if the Islanders miss the playoffs, they will keep the pick. But if they somehow make it, they will give the pick up to Vancouver. So, makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing is, if they miss the playoffs this year, and next year, this year, if they miss it, they'll get the pick back. But the next year, 2024, is unprotected. And a lot of people were speculating that he was going to, walk in free agency, and he was demanding for too much money. And the Islanders were able to give him a nice, handsome extension for 8 years at $8.5 million. And in the second game, his first at home at UBS, he scored his first goal as an Islander last night over the Seattle Kraken.
Nice. And then, of course, we look at Dylan Cozens and all the things he's done in his short time with the Sabres, and all I could say, really, really solid player. I love the fact he steps up, he protects his teammates, he's not afraid to drop the gloves, he can score goals, actually plays defensively pretty well also. Absolutely well-deserved that 7-year extension.
You know what's one thing that a lot of people have been saying about this whole Cozens thing is how teams are now starting to emulate what the Sabres are doing in terms of contracts. Like Tage Thompson got $7 million, Dylan Cozens got $7 million, Samuelson got $7 million. So now I guarantee Kevin Adams is going to try to give $7 million to Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin, which rightfully they both deserve contracts.
100%, yeah.
But I mean, at this age, why the fuck would you not? I mean, they're clearly like core pieces of this team going forward. So if that's the case, if you're able to lock up 5 players that are under $7 million that are homegrown players, then I gotta say Kevin Adams has been doing a phenomenal job. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, and he wasn't like what we would call the sexy pick for the GM. Honestly, you guys probably remember when he was becoming the GM and when Botterill got fired, and I was totally against Adams getting anything, but he's actually surprised me in a good way.
Yeah, it's funny because I think I remember saying when Botterill got fired, I said, you know what? I didn't want Adams to be the GM because I wanted someone else with experience to come on board. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, you know what? At the end of the day, I have to do what's right and, give him a chance. And he's been now the GM for 3 years?
Yeah.
And 3 years already, and he's been solid, honestly. I mean, he's signing some good players. He's drafting well. He's trading well.
Mm-hmm.
He's getting a young team up and coming,
Yeah,
and a lot of
we have a
people are
good
starting to
core.
take notice. Yeah, it's getting so ridiculous with his strategy on contracts that the Red Wings are going to try to attempt to do the same thing on. Oh, I'm not the Red Wings. Yeah, the Canadians. Excuse me, not the Red Wings.
Mm-hmm.
On
Hey, Bobby, you froze.
Cole Caulfield. The Canadians are going to try to give Cole.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Bob, I think your Wi-Fi is like crapping out. All right. So what we'll do, we'll give it a minute to see if his Wi-Fi comes back, because
Caulfield.
It looks. Oh, hey, there you are. It looks like your Wi-Fi crapped out for a few moments there because you totally froze. All right. So what we'll do, we'll give it. You back? All right. Hey, Bob, are you back on? All right. So what we'll do, we'll kind of give it a minute. We'll see what happens with his Wi-Fi and everything. But I know he was freezing up a little bit as we were going through. But I know he was talking about Cole Caulfield and also talking about Montreal in terms of their rebuild strategy. And I mean, they're going to probably try to emulate a lot of what Adams has been doing. But when you look at what Adams has done, especially the last 3 years, I mean, he's basically rebuilt the Sabres. You have that core, and of course, it's something that a lot of teams want to go after at this point in terms of that same type of strategy. But the fact that he's locked up all these players in a short time, beautiful to see.
Absolutely. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay, thank fucking Lord. 'Cause I told Brittany, please shut the fucking PS5 off. Because you know what it is? It's not just me. It was also, my wife's been having issues at work lately because my PS5 takes up a lot of the signals. Mm-hmm. So it fucks up all the Wi-Fi within that one instant. But I didn't think it was going to do that. So I apologize in advance.
Yeah, no problem. You were talking about Cole Caulfield and the Montreal Canadiens.
Right. So what I was trying to say before all that fucking fiasco was the Canadians are going to try to give Cole Caulfield that similar extension the Sabres gave to Dylan Cozens and Tage Thompson, which is around $7 and $7.5 million per year. Which that's going to be tough considering the talent and the level and the atmosphere of the Montreal Canadiens. You're playing for a big market, and he's going to demand probably $8.5 million if he's lucky. I don't know if he will. But like players like Dylan Larkin want $8 or $9 million. Cole Caulfield's probably going to want $7.5, maybe $8 million. Dylan Cozens already got it. Tage Thompson already got it. Mm-hmm. But you know what's the really nice thing about those two contracts is if you look at Thompson's contract and if you look at Cozens' contract, combined salary, Tom, is $14.24.2 million.
That's nothing compared to what some other teams spend.
Yeah, and that's just this season alone. Because if you look at the statistics for both these guys, Thompson,
mm-hmm. Yeah, I think your Wi-Fi cut out again.
34 goals. No, I refuse to.
All right, I think you're back on.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, so forgive me going forward, please.
All right. No worries.
Yeah, $14 million for two players under 25 years old. That is really fucking cheap.
It is. And the spot that the Sabres in right now, we have a lot of money that we can use towards the cap. We can go after good players. And we can continue to build smartly through the draft and free agency as well. So a lot of options we can go with. And, of course, there are some other teams we can talk about, which we'll go into in a moment, that are a total dumpster fire and a poverty franchise right now. And before we do that, of course, if you're watching this, 929-205-6099 will get you on the show. And Apparently, when it rains, it pours in Vancouver because right now, this is hilarious. Jim Rutherford wants out.
The president of hockey operations, Jim Rutherford, who blindly went to Vancouver thinking, I could do exactly what I did for Pittsburgh and Carolina. And look how that poorly ran out. Jim Rutherford should have retired after that second Stanley Cup 6 years ago.
Yeah, and of course, he is basically a scapegoat for what happened with Bruce Boudreau. The same thing with Patrick Elvin, their GM. But it really makes me wonder now, who's really in control of the Canucks? Was Rutherford just the front man? Or is Patrick Elvin really putting the screws to the franchise? Because I could tell you, well, losing Bo Horvat was a problem for the Canucks. Then, of course, the whole Bruce Boudreau situation with how it was handled was a problem. They tried to blame Elliot Friedman for putting the information out when Friedman was just doing his job. And then, basically, of course, Thatcher Demko wants out. And pretty much half of their high-end stars want out. So it's literally, at this point, nobody wants to play for them.
No, and I don't blame them one bit. Elias Pettersson wants out, supposedly. Brock Besser is another player that might want out. The Vancouver Canucks, in general, are just a freaking disaster. They are so bad that they make the 2010s Buffalo Sabres look like amateurs in comparison.
Yeah. It's insane. And no matter how bad things were here, Vancouver is making it look 10 times worse on their end.
Yeah, and it gets even worse because this is now the third player that was a captain for the Canucks or is a legend for the Canucks that played for the Islanders. And the last one to do that before Bo Horvat was Trevor Linden. He was the last Canucks legend / captain who played for the Canucks, but was also traded to the Islanders.
Yeah, and it's insane. And, of course, we're linked to possibly going after Demko, which would be a nice goaltender upgrade. I mean, I can tell you that, him in UPL. But yeah. It's like, one of those, I'm like, Vancouver, what are you doing to these people? Well, it's brutal. And the way that they handled Boudreau was absolutely crap.
The last time I got PTSD when I heard the two words Islanders and Vancouver was around the time when the Islanders traded Roberto Luongo. And, well, that was with Florida. But, no, I'm sorry, yeah. I was getting it messed up with Todd Bertuzzi and somebody else. Like, I know Bertuzzi was on the Islanders for a little bit, and then he got traded to Vancouver. I'm trying to remember who he was traded for. Was it Trevor Linden? I don't think it was Linden. I want to say it's Linden, but
I want to think it was. I know it wasn't Luongo because I think that was like totally separate.
Yeah, that was a completely different deal because I remember they traded him to Florida first,
and then he came back
and it was for. Yeah, but that was years later because he went to Florida and it was for Oleg Kavaja and Mark Parrish. And I will say Kavaja was a fraud, but Mark Parrish, though, I liked a lot when he was on the Islanders. Because I remember going to a lot of games when I was a younger kid when they had Alexi Asha, Michael Pekka, Mark Parrish, Jason Blake, Yanni Ninema, Adrian Coyne. They had a decent team, but they weren't good enough to win the cup. But the point I'm trying to make is Bo Horvat is the latest guy in this category to be a captain of the Vancouver Canucks to be traded to the Islanders.
Right. And it's just absolutely insane what Vancouver is doing. And the thing is, I mean, their GM Patrick Elvin's an idiot right off the bat. Is he like seriously that power hungry that he wants to have like total control even over Rutherford? I mean, come on.
Well, Jim Rutherford, Tom, to be fair, did say that he was not happy with training camp, and that was in September. It's February. So you had 5 months to address this. You could have went full in, and you could have told your fans, listen, guys, we're probably going to be going into rebuild, and I'm just hoping you embrace it. And if we're going to do this right. That is what I think they should have done, because I know that that's something that the Rangers have done. John Tortorella this week came out and said it, that the Flyers, with his 10 years coach, they're not going to be a playoff team. They've already straight up said it. So, no, I think teams who do that, I respect. But Vancouver is making this look so petty. Like, I don't even know where to begin. And again, compare that to the 2010s with the Buffalo Sabres, with how bad they've been. They were nowhere near as dysfunctional as the Vancouver Canucks right now.
Oh, yeah.
They are the definition of a dumpster fire.
Yeah. I mean, and And guess what? And I think it'll get worse for them before it gets better. We haven't even seen the worst of it there yet.
Oh no! Trust me, it's gonna get a lot worse because Bo Horvat was like, "Oh, I wish I was a Canuck for life," and bullshit, Bo. You know you were leaving.
He wanted out, and he wanted to be with a playoff team. And apparently, I guess Bobby's Wi-Fi thinks that it's a dumpster fire also.
Yeah, my Wi-Fi is a dumpster fire. I apologize.
It's all good. But yeah, it's like you knew Horvat wanted out and he wanted to go to a team that would actually be in contention for the playoffs.
Yeah. You want to hear something really interesting about Bo Horvat's contract?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is from a person by the name of Rachel Dory. I think I'm saying her name right. She said on Twitter, the important things to point out here is Bo Horvat has a no signing bonus within money, meaning he can be bought out more easily if necessary, conceding a bit on annual average value to ensure that it's not a buyout-proof contract is underrated. And if you're going to overpay, make sure you could buy it out if you need to.
Nice. So the Islanders protected themselves. Horvat gets a nice extension. And he's going to have a nice line to play with because, of course, with the way it was set up, I know it's him. If I remember correctly, he's on the first line. It's him, Barzal, and who else is he with?
He's with Brock Besser, but they're probably going to put him on the wing. They were talking about this. And John Gabriel Pajot was another center. But the thing with Pajot is that because the Islanders are so heavy in depth at center, they're talking about trading Pajot to Carolina if they're able to afford it. And Pajot makes about $6.5 million, and they gave up a first round pick a couple years ago to get him. So it's gonna be, and this is the thing with Lou Lamoriello. He's been doing this with New Jersey. He's been doing this with Toronto.
Oh yeah, does it with every team.
Yeah, he's done it with every team he's been playing GM with, with the Devils or with the Leafs, is anytime he gets a big name player to come to that prospective city, he always signs them to an extension and then fucks them over later in the contract negotiation in terms of other players. Like this happened with Marty Brodeur, but he's an exception because he's a Hall of Fame player.
Right.
The Ilya Kovalchuk situation, 15 years or something. I forget how much money it was, like $300 million or something. And it screwed up the Devils cap so much that he retired early 1 year after that contract, and they had to forfeit a first round pick because it was against the contract negotiating rules or whatnot. Some petty outwording thing about it. I don't remember, but I remember the Devils.
And I think Bobby's Wi-Fi got poached by Patrick Elvin again.
I remember a lot. But yeah, so what I was trying to say is Kobe screwed the Devils over big time, and it forced them to lose draft picks and shit like that.
Yep, it certainly did. So, but it'll be nice to see what happens though with both teams. I mean, especially now that they got those players locked up, with Sabres and of course with the Islanders, and the fact that Vancouver is going to be irrelevant for probably at least the next 5 years. So that's pretty much my thought on that. But at least we're not Vancouver.
I just, with all due respect, Tom, I just absolutely hate that the Islanders gave up Aturatu. He's going to be a star in 5 years. You're going to probably see him in multiple years in the All-Star game representing the Canucks, and he's going to be one of the best centers in the league if he develops right, of course, in Vancouver. Beauvillier, I wasn't too angry about, but I was just surprised, if that makes a lot of sense.
Right. It reminds me when Ali Mata left Pittsburgh when he ended up going bye-bye on a trade too, and I know a lot of Penguins fans were interested in his development. And I remember seeing his first ever NHL goal when I went to see a game live down there, and I know they weren't keen on that, but I mean they ended up getting a fairly decent return in the process. So I mean, it works out. It happens. You got to do it sometimes, but.
Yeah, but the difference between Anthony Beauvillier and Ali Mata is night and day. Anthony Beauvillier did a hell lot more in his career than Ali Mata did in Pittsburgh.
Right, very true. So
I'm just throwing that out there.
Yep, very true. So with that, what we'll do is we'll go on to the next little thing before we take our quick break. But the NHLPA is going to have some leadership changes, and this is actually one of the things where Marty Walsh, the U.S. Labor Secretary, is actually going to step down from that post, and he's going to become the executive director of the Players Association.
Yay. I'm so excited to have a Democratic politician run the NHLPA. And not just anybody. Yeah, and Tom just said he was the current U.S. Secretary of Labor for the administration for Joe Biden. For anybody who in Canada is not sure of it, doesn't follow politics that much, but Marty Walsh is a Democrat, so he is going to be leaving politics to be the new head man or the new yes man of the NHLPA and butcher more contracts. I can't wait.
And of course, the NHLPA, a lot of times, I don't even care about what they do half the time.
They treat the players like shit. Just throwing that out there.
Very true. Very
They treat
true.
the players like shit.
And of course, their situation will not get any better with him, more than likely.
Right.
So, I don't know what to tell you on that one. I don't even know. It's like, does he even know anything about hockey?
I have to think he does. I mean, he was the mayor of Boston a few years ago.
Right, but even if he was a mayor, what like hockey sense does that give him?
I don't know. I mean, who really knows? I mean, Gary Bettman certainly as hell doesn't have any. Donald Fearsar as hell didn't have any. And then it's all about the money with these people. I made a video, and it was one of my older videos on my old channel, like 10 years ago. And I made a rant video about how it was going into its third lockout. And I pointed the finger a lot at Donald Fear and Gary Bettman for being greedy. If you want to see that, I'll leave a link in the description. But if you're interested, I was like in college when I made that video. So I had some very strong opinions at that time when when that video came out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was interesting because actually I'm looking at some of the news about that whole decision to bring Walsh on as the executive director, and apparently what had happened is that it was reported originally on Tuesday afternoon by Politico, but apparently there were some secretive deliberations for some time that led to the whole move of him becoming the executive director. And apparently some NHL players and agents really do not like this move. And basically the players were completely in the dark about it. And apparently even Walsh's own executive is his own PR people didn't even know about it. So it's like, how does his own people not even know about the whole situation, and yet he's been involved with it? But here's the other thing as well that was reported. The biggest sticking point, Jeremy Jacobs, the Boston Bruins owner, was a major donor to Walsh in the past during his tenure as Boston mayor. And apparently Jacobs is also, of course, the chairman of the NHL Board of Governors, which is the only group that the Players Union absolutely can't stand more than the owners themselves. So apparently what's happened is Bettman even basically was a little bit involved with the process also, but it was so secretive to the point where probably about 90% of everybody didn't even know what was going on.
How is Jeremy Jacobs still alive? That's what I want to know. That dude is 83 years old. This guy, you're telling me, had the audacity to donate his money to a politician. Yes, a politician who works for U.S. Congress or was the Secretary of Labor for the administration for Joe Biden is all of a sudden going to come in and be the new director of the NHLPA, and nobody likes the damn guy. So it's like, did you have a secret meeting behind closed doors, and you just kind of just said, nope, guys, go in the corner over there. Mm-hmm. They probably did this shit 10 years ago or whenever it was when Donald Fear was the director. And now that he's retiring, they're bringing in Marty Walsh, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, Jesus Christ, this is going to be one of those stupid-ass things where nothing gets done, and the players get treated like shit.
Right. What else is new? You know?
But then again, you have to remember, this guy is a politician.
Yeah. And we know that politicians lie.
Oh, yeah. They always lie. I don't get involved in politics as much, but politicians tend to lie a lot. And this is a good sign of what a normal politician would do. Go behind the employer's back or the employee's back or the staffer's back, whatever, and then have a secret meeting with the commissioner or whoever was involved,
Mm-hmm.
and it just said, "I'll take the job," and nobody likes the guy.
Right. I'm gonna say the players' union. It's only gonna get worse for you before it even gets any better.
I don't know, man. I'm not excited about it. I am not excited at all for the
Mm-hmm.
players.
Yeah, me either. Me either. And of course, it's like I've never really heard about this
But
guy. I don't know what his track record is, but I can tell you if it's very secretive, we already know how a lot of things will probably go forward with the players' union, and they'll probably
we're gonna
get like
find out soon
shafted.
enough. We're probably gonna find out soon enough, and I think it's only fair the players have a say.
Right. And they should. I mean, the NFL has a players' association, hockey has it, NBA has a players' association,
Every
and
every league has it.
every league has one. Right. But the fact that this was beyond secretive to the point where nobody, not even Walsh's own people, knew what was going on, that's not a good sign up front, especially
No.
when it comes to how business may be handled.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not that confident in it. I mean, what if the players get too greedy and the players go into another lockout in a couple of years, and Marty Walsh is going to be the one to grab them, to grab the bull by the horns?
Right. It very well could be the case. I mean, Bettman's had a couple lockouts in his tenure, and somehow he doesn't manage to be ousted as commissioner of the NHL.
Well, this is now three of them. He's done, and this is his last contract, basically. And then Bill Daly, I think, will be the next guy up.
Right. Or what do you think if Walsh ends up screwing everybody over and becomes the next commissioner, which, God, I hope never happens?
I don't think that's going to happen because I don't think, if anything, I don't think Marty Walsh will do it.
Right. But then again, you never know. Some of these politicians, they'll lie, cheat, and steal on everything.
Yes, they do. And Marty is already proving that he's a politician.
Right. Especially when his own staff doesn't even know about secret meetings.
Fucking asshole.
I don't even know how the hell that's possible.
I don't know. I really wish I knew that answer. Then
Same
again,
here.
yeah, we just have to play it out. That's the best way I could put it.
Yeah, very true. Well, what we'll do is we're pretty much at our half-hour mark, so coming up in the second half of the show, got a lot of things we're going to cover. Of course, we'll cover the whole news about Kim Pegula and her health issues that came out yesterday, and then we'll jump into some NFL news with some coaching changes, and of course, we'll end on our Super Bowl predictions. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome to Buffalo After Dark, everybody. It's your Wednesday night uncensored, unfiltered, and unafraid sports show. You still up? This episode of Buffalo After Dark starts now. Welcome back to the second half of Buffalo After Dark. Of course, it's me, Tom. You got Bob here. We've still got another half hour to go. If you want to jump on and talk with us, so we have the Facebook chat live and running, and also 92920560099 will get you in on our show. So, breaking news that ended up coming out yesterday, and we finally know what happened to Kim Pegula. And this is actually a pretty sad story. And first and foremost, I mean, she is still here with us, which is good. And and luckily it wasn't worse than what it could have been. But the story that came out, and actually their daughter Jessie Pegula had gone into a big article about this yesterday, but Kim Pegula had suffered a cardiac arrest back in June. And what had happened is during that time, it actually turned out that their other daughter, Kelly, who was in the house, ended up having to give her CPR, and Kim was actually sleeping at the time, and so was Terry. So it turned out that Kim was not responsive, and then CPR was given, and she was taken to a hospital when they were down in Florida. And she ended up having to be in the ICU for some time, and then transferred into an inpatient facility for additional care. And basically, what happened is when the whole Damar Hamlin situation came up, it was a big flashback to Jessie Pegula. She said, in part of what her comments were, is that she felt like she wanted to throw up because it was just a whole flashback of the situation again. The good thing is, number one, at least Kim Pegula is still with us. So if by some chance they are watching the show, we definitely wish you continued progress in your recovery. In terms of what happens now with Pegula Sports and Entertainment, because she's the president of the Sabres and the Bills, this kind of connects the dots in some ways, because they did hire an executive recently that was going to be the operations officer for both teams. So it almost makes me think that because of this issue that came up, that only just came to light now, several months after the fact, it almost makes me wonder that this was a position they hired for because Kim had been involved in that operations side pretty heavily. So it kind of makes sense in that now, but still, it's a tough thing to see, when that happens. And I mean, at least, she's doing better, but there have been some things that were mentioned by Jessie about her memory and being able to kind of put thoughts into words and so forth. So there may be some potential issues there in terms of neurological deficit, but still, it's it's one of those things. I don't think any of us expected to hear that.
No, I don't think so. But it's kind of sad when you think about it that they had to wait 5 months. Well, not 5 months, like almost, what is it, 8 months?
Almost a year.
Yeah, almost a year to tell the public, hey, Kim Pegula, the president of the Sabres and the Bills, had a cardiac arrest in June. And Damar Hamlin just had a cardiac arrest in January. So maybe my question is do you think, Tom, that all this leading up to the Bills-Bengals game, I mean, it could be prior, do you think by this point that because Hamlin went into cardiac arrest and was in shock, that it mentally broke down the Bills, especially with them possibly knowing at the time that Kim was in a cardiac arrest and had to be in intensive care and all that stuff? Like, do you think it kind of dragged on with them?
It's kind of tough to say. I would almost think on a player's standpoint, I mean, they were probably aware of it, but it's something where I think the Hamlin situation probably hit more home for them just because it happened during an actual game. And we all saw what happened during that game in January. I mean, that was tough to watch, and we actually did an entire episode later that week just on the whole Hamlin situation. I don't think it would have weighed as heavy on the players as what Hamlin did, but at the same time, I mean, it definitely, I would think it would have had to bring flashbacks to the whole situation, because I would have to think in some way the players probably knew a little bit more about it. And of course, they weren't going to talk publicly about it just for privacy reasons, which is totally respectable. I get that. And, I'm not going to say anything bad about that. But I think Hamlin's situation probably weighed more on them than anything, just because it was an in-game situation and the circumstances that led up to it.
Right, but you also have to remember Kim Pegula was also the one that openly gave these players, with welcome arms, and basically said welcome to the Bills or welcome to the Sabres. So I think she plays, as much as I don't agree with her business status, as much as I don't agree with her antics and how she's arrogant at some points, but I don't wish anything like that on anybody. And I'm just happy that she's okay and she's making a speedy recovery. But I do have to say, though, is that I firmly believe that the Bills, when they played Cincinnati that week, like a month ago, I think it's mostly because, not just because of Damar Hamlin, but I think it's because of Kim Pegula's issue. I think
and I think Bobby's Wi-Fi went out again.
a lot of people. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can.
Yeah. So what I was saying before was is I think the Cincinnati game when they played it, I think they knew about it, but they didn't want it to go public, so they were focusing on Hamlin. So I think that's what it broke down the Bills as a whole. And I'm not using that game or that tragedy as an excuse, but I think at that point they were just physically and mentally exhausted with all the drama they've had to put up with this year.
Right. Yeah, and they did go through a lot this year. I mean, it's a lot for any team to handle, and it'll be interesting to see what they do in the offseason now with the draft, of course, that'll be coming up, and then any of the contract signings, the cap, all of that stuff. But it'll also be interesting to see what kind of role Kim Pegula has with the team going forward, because right now, even Jesse Pegula mentioned she's not going to be the same. So I'm thinking what's going to happen, it might be a situation where they have her as president of the team, but what they'll probably do is have something along the lines of maybe like a president of football operations, or they'll probably divide it up in some way. So then this way she doesn't have to necessarily worry about all of the stuff going on. So they'll probably have like someone that's directing their operations, and of course the GM and all of that stuff. I'm almost thinking Brandon Beane will probably take a larger role with the organization as well, probably handle more of the things that Kim Pegula would have handled. And then
No.
I know they'll probably do some different things there. That's just my guess, but I mean, anything could happen.
I don't know. I don't know if Brandon Beane will do that because he's already been I think he's been a solid GM, but as a whole, because I mean there are some things he has to correct, but as like doing two positions at once, I think that's a lot of stress for one person. So I think if anything, if Kim Pegula says in the future I can't work anymore, I think they're going to bring in somebody who has business experience or a former player that could take on the role or something like that. Maybe like a Thurman Thomas I could see, or maybe like it doesn't even have to really necessarily be Thurman Thomas or any of the legends. It could be like Aaron Williams. It could be Fred Jackson. It could be any of those guys. Honestly, I mean, at the end of the day, it has to do if the players can relate with them, because that's what it comes down to. Because Kim was really good with the Bills. Not really as much with the Sabres, but it's the same idea. But she was very connective with the Bills.
Right, and I think the way they had it set up is Terry was more hands on with the Sabres, Kim was more hands on with the Bills. But even now, Terry isn't as much hands on anymore with the Sabres. He's letting Kevin Adams run the show, which I think is a huge improvement, when we look at that, because we talked about it, especially the first like 2 seasons or so on the show, and actually even prior to that, where I think part of the issue was Terry was so hands-on with the Sabres initially that it caused them to go backwards before they went forwards. And it's something where he had to realize that, hey, I've got good people in here that can manage this team effectively. All I have to do is just check in with them every so often and just keep my hands off, let them run the day-to-day. And we've seen how that's worked out. Initially, they did that with the Bills, too. And, of course, that led to the whole issue with Rex Ryan before McDermott and Bean came in. So I think what's happened over time, I think they have evolved in a sense where a lot of people did not like them as owners initially, especially with the Sabres, because it was promised our whole objective is to win a Stanley Cup, which hasn't happened yet. But at least now, the Bills have been in a much better direction for the last several years. And, I mean, they've made playoffs like 5 out of 6 years now.
Yeah, and the Sabres are starting to get better.
Sabres are finally starting to get better. They're only 1 point behind the Penguins, I think, at this point.
No,
or Washington.
I think they're 4 points behind the Islanders because they won back-to-back. And I think they're a point behind Pittsburgh. Let me see what the exact numbers are. I don't want to get that wrong, and then it'd be like, oh, that's misinformation. You know how it is these days.
Right. But they're very close to getting into that wild card spot should they continue to win, which is very possible. And no one thought they were going to make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so to answer your question, they're 4 points behind the Capitals, and they're 3 games. They're 4 points behind the Capitals. They're 3 points each behind the Penguins and the Islanders, and the Sabres have 4 games in hand.
Yeah, so the Sabres are in a much better situation now than they had been, and and give them credit. And I think what happens as time has gone on, they've learned, hey, I don't have to have the hands on every single aspect of the team. we have people that can handle that. We just have to trust them to do that. So I think, regardless of the situation, I mean, yeah, it's a crap situation for Pegula, and at least her recovery continues to go in a positive direction, which is good. But I think now what happens is that she doesn't have to have her hands on every single part of the organization. And basically, she can just have the people in place that will do everything that they need, and they can just go forward from there. And I think that there probably won't be too much in the day-to-day in terms of any changes.
We're going to find out soon enough, you know?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But at least, that side of things, at least it wasn't worse than what it is. So that's a good thing. And, of course, continued well wishes on the recovery. With that, let's go into some NFL news, because there have been a lot of changes in the past 2 weeks or so.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the big things that came up, Brian Flores is on the move, Steve Wilkes is on the move, Alvaro's on the move, but the big one, Sean Payton, is the new head coach of the Denver Broncos, and New Orleans got some pretty decent compensation as a result.
Oh, Daddy, yes, they did.
And Vic Fangio will not be going back to Denver. He is actually the new defensive coordinator for the Dolphins.
Yeah, Vic Fangio, I'm happy for the guy, but let's see how he does as the D coordinator, because you can go into any system you want, but you may not perform as much as you were in, like, one city you were previously in. And Dolphins fans are really excited about Vic Fangio. It's like, oh, he worked with Bradley Chubb. I'm like, well, if Bradley Chubb is your only best supporting cast member, then that's a pretty shitty sign that you got nothing else going for you.
Right, very true. But it's nice to see Flores get another gig, because, I mean, Miami screwed him hardcore. And the fact now that Flores is going to be full-time coordinator, I mean, he's going to do well. And it's only a matter of time before he gets another head coaching gig.
Absolutely. I think Flores should have got the Cardinals job. If anything, it's already being said that the Cardinals will not hire a head coach. Same with the Colts. Neither team are going to hire a head coach until after the Super Bowl. So we'll see who they get afterwards. We really don't know yet. But regarding Flores, I firmly think that this was a slam dunk hire for Minnesota, because their defense was atrocious last season.
It was ass, especially in that championship game that they ended up losing to the Eagles.
Well, they also lost to the Vikings. They also lost to the Giants in the wild card weekend.
The Giants. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
I was thinking about them earlier in the season, but yeah, the Giants kicked their ass in their own home.
Yeah, and I was rooting for the Giants at that game.
Yeah, and Daboll got Coach of the Year, so there you go.
Well, there you have it. So we'll see if he gets it tomorrow. I mean, I'll be happy for Daboll for sure. But no, but as far as Minnesota goes, I'm happy for Flores. I think he's a really good coach. I think for him to go to Minnesota, I think is the perfect place for him to go, because you're dealing with Darius Smith, you're dealing with Harrison Smith, you're also dealing with Danielle Hunter. You're dealing with some pretty good guys.
They've got some nice talent on that line.
Yeah, but they're not contributed as much. And of course they have Harrison Phillips.
Right. And the thing with Flores is he can get a lot out of players, and that's one of the things he did in Miami. And I mean, he had Miami becoming relevant again after their coaching hires previously. And really, I would almost say, like, between the time that they had Wannstedt up to Flores, Miami was just not that relevant of a franchise. Wannstedt did some good things with them. Obviously, he was let go. He became coordinator with us here in Buffalo, but before he was let go again. But Flores had Miami going in a better direction. And, of course, we saw what happened with Miami's ownership. They decided to fire him, and then they went the direction that they did, which caused a lot of uproar. And then, I mean, Flores ended up spending the season with Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh as an advisor, worked on their defense a little bit. But for him to have the full reins on the defense in Minnesota, it's a huge upgrade for them. And I think he's going to get a lot more out of that core than what had happened previously. And I will say this, good on Kevin O'Connell over there to actually realize something's not working after his first season as a head coach, because he wasn't afraid to make that change very early on, especially when he saw what happened in that playoff game. They got manhandled by the Giants. There is no doubt about that. So what does he do? Gets rid of his defensive coordinator, brings in Flores, who's proven on defense. There you go. You have a nice upgrade. And I like the fact that he took that move right off the bat.
For Minnesota.
Yep. So of course that happened. Then Steve Wilkes, who was passed over for the Carolina Panthers job, he's got another coordinator gig right now too, and that's gonna definitely help, especially with I believe it was the 49ers he ended up going to.
Mm-hmm. You know what's funny? I was talking to Adam about this, and let me tell you something. Adam was pissed when he found out the Panthers let Steve Wilkes go to the 49ers because they brought in what the guy's name is, Ejiro Evero. I think I'm saying his name right. I mean, if I'm pronouncing it wrong, I apologize. But they're bringing in Ejiro Evero, whatever his name is. He was the D coordinator for the Broncos this year with Nate Hackett, and now he's going to go to Carolina with Frank Reich. And a lot of people are saying that's a slam dunk hire. But for Wilkes, I think for him to go from Carolina, which was a really good defensive team, to San Francisco,
which is an even better defensive team.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're going to a really good system. So for Wilkes to get the job to replace D'Amico Ryans, who became the head coach of the Texans, I think that was a slam dunk hire for San Francisco. They needed help in that position, and they finally got it.
Yeah, they get immediate help on that. They don't even have to worry about anything. It's basically he's going to strengthen that defense even more. And San Francisco has a tough defense to play against. So the fact that Wilkes is going to be running that show now, oh my God. I would not want to be one of the teams out west on that.
This is like the third year in a row, or the fourth year in a row, that the 49ers defensive coordinator has left the team to be a head coach in the NFL from the Shanahan tree. You had Robert Saleh, then you had D'Amico Ryans, and now you're going to have Steve Wilkes. I guarantee you, if the 49ers are back in the playoffs, which they will, but if they go back to the playoffs next year and they have number one defense, I guarantee you someone is going to look at Wilkes and they're going to say, we want that guy to be our coach.
He would have to be in the conversation for a head coach again, because the fact that he took the struggling Carolina Panthers and made them relevant towards the end of the season, he did a lot to change that culture in a short time. Yeah. So he could very much do the same. And I'm and I'm glad to see D'Amico Ryan get the job in Houston as well, because I think that he'll do a lot of good changes with that organization. I mean, they can't really go any further down from where they were. And then at the same time, I mean, San Francisco has found a way to keep that defense very strong, going from Saleh to D'Amico Ryan to now Steve Wilkes. So they've had a great mindset of how to go forward, and they landed him at the perfect time.
Yeah, it's funny because I've actually heard a lot of mixed opinions about Wilkes in Charlotte. A group of players wanted Wilkes to be the coach, and then other people on the other half of that story, I don't know because there was no names reported, but there were several players in the building that said, I like Steve Wilkes over Frank Reich. But I think a lot of those players are using them off their opinions off of emotion. I think that's what it is, because I think Steve Wilkes is a player's coach. Frank Reich, I think, will definitely fix the offense for sure, but I think bringing in his own guys, like, Evero, I think that's going to really solidify his reputation from Indianapolis. Right. But we'll see what Wilkes can do in San Francisco. But I'm happy for him, though. He's going from a pretty mediocre Carolina team to a pretty good Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, 100%. And San Francisco's got the talent to do it. I mean, on both sides of the ball. So be interesting to see what they do this coming season. Except they have to fix their quarterback situation now, which is a total mess. But at the same time, I mean, Jimmy G, he's going to probably be gone. Of course, Trey Lance, who knows what's going to happen with him with that whole ankle injury. Then, of course, Brock Purdy, he's going to be out 6 months with Tommy John surgery. So,
yeah. I think, though, if anything, I think Jimmy G goes to the Jets, because I think Derek Carr goes to the Saints. Who was another player that was brought up? Tom Brady. He retired.
Yep.
Not too long
ago.
Again. Let's see. Jimmy G goes to the Jets. Brady retired. Rodgers, I think, goes to the Raiders, but we'll get to him in a bit. And who was another guy that was open? Trey Lance. That was another guy. They're talking about trading him to Tennessee, which I don't know if that's going to work. I really don't know. But we'll find out.
Either. Yeah, and it's kind of surprising because, I mean, Aaron Rodgers still may not be back in Green Bay. He may still have another season in him, and who knows where he'll end up. Unless he decides to hang up the cleats.
Well, I will say this. Aaron Rodgers already openly said, I'm not going to San Francisco, and I would rather play for the Raiders than the Jets.
Right. And then, of course, Derek Carr, he might be going to New Orleans.
Well, yeah, that too, because there was actually a tweet from Derek Carr, and it was an edited picture of himself, in a New Orleans Saints jersey, and it's a quote. It's like a movie, and it was somebody just edited a picture of Derek Carr in a Saints jersey. That's pretty much what it was. But no, it's just funny because I remember talking about this with you a few weeks ago when they hired Nate Hackett, and we both agreed the Jets are fucking stupid for hiring Hackett. They jumped to the conclusion. Learned
That's the name of that episode too. It actually got it actually got a high number of views.
Yeah, and it's also getting to the point where Aaron Rodgers is now saying, I would rather play for that shit show in Vegas because with Devontae Adams, because then my question becomes, why did Devontae Adams leave Green Bay in the first place if he's now trying to recruit Aaron Rodgers to go play for the Raiders?
Right. And we know Adams and Rodgers are friends.
Well, that's true. They're friends. But this whole thing is just a joke. I don't understand the logic. It's kind of like saying you have a frenemy in high school. You go to another school to be away from that frenemy, and then your frenemy goes along with it and says, hey, let's bring you in. It causes more trouble. Like, you can't, like, that's just stupid. Wasn't the whole purpose, too, for Devontae Adams to be in Vegas was to play with Derek Carr? Mm-hmm. So, now...
And Derek Carr is gone, because obviously Vegas doesn't want him back.
Yeah, Vegas, listen, this is going to be another one of those years where I think we're going to see a clusterfuck of trades with any quarterback, because I've heard now the price for Derek Carr is now a second or a third, or one of the two picks, or both. And I think New Orleans is going to give them the option to get Derek Carr and use that first-round pick and give it to the Raiders that they got for Sean Payton from the Broncos. That's what I think.
Yeah. And the fact that the Broncos ended up giving up more draft picks and to get Sean Payton, all I can say is good luck drafting.
Yeah, Denver is not the brightest bulb in the room. They have not been very smart lately with draft picks. Because if there's one thing we've learned about last year, it's the fact that you don't give up multiple first-round picks. But to be fair, though, at that time, we thought that Russell Wilson going to the Broncos was the best thing to happen to them. And then, sure enough, he gets exposed as this mediocre quarterback with more. He's had more commercials this year than the Broncos have had wins. That's embarrassing. Oh, and he also threw more interceptions than he has bathrooms in his own mansion in Denver.
Right.
So,
it's absolutely insane. Now, here's what was reported as the actual yearly salary for Peyton with the Broncos. So of course,
I can't wait.
He's going to be getting about $18 million a year. It's a 5-year deal, which he's going to be one of the richest, highest paid coaches in all of football. And here's the other thing. Last year under Nate Hackett, Wilson had his worst career numbers ever. Career low in completion percentage. He only completed 60.5% of his passing attempts and touchdowns. And basically, he had a QB rating of 84.4.
Oh, my God. Wait a minute. Hold on. Time out. Are you telling me Sean Payton, who hasn't coached in the NFL for almost 2 years, is going to be paid $18 million per year?
Yeah, USA Today.
Are you shitting me?
No.
What is Denver thinking? Why are you giving him $18 million to be mediocre without Drew Brees?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and here's the interesting thing. So, Russell Wilson's not making any comments about Sean Payton's hiring, but he did reach out to Drew Brees, supposedly, to ask about Sean Payton in advance so he can prepare for his time with him. And apparently NBC Sports is reporting that Wilson is, quote, willing to be coached hard by Payton.
Good luck.
Yeah.
If there's any good fucking luck. Because if there's anything we've learned about Sean Payton is just like Belichick without Brady, Sean Payton is nothing without Drew Brees.
Right. And here's the interesting thing, too, is that the contract extension that Denver did with Russell Wilson is worth as high as $245 million. $245 million for Russell Wilson.
Denver, stop!
And not only are they paying him that, but all the draft picks they gave up to Seattle.
This is more investment money.
And then on top of that, the draft picks they gave to the New Orleans Saints.
If I'm a Denver Broncos fan, I would be screaming my head off with how bad this is. Listen to me. You're giving up 200. What was the price for Russell Wilson?
It was $245 million for Russell Wilson.
$245 million for Russell Wilson, and you're giving Sean Payton, who hasn't coached in 2 years, $18 million.
Yeah,
and
for 5 seasons. So he's getting $90 million.
Yeah, and you're throwing around that first round pick like it's executive hot potato.
Right. So it's like literally between Peyton and Russell Wilson, Denver just gave up like 5 picks.
Oh my God, and a lot of money. Because think about that.
Yeah.
Because if Denver falls back into being even worse than they were this year,
yeah, it's almost $345 million combined.
They are honestly, the Broncos are so fucking stupid when it comes to money. I'm not even exaggerating. The Denver Broncos have proven, and George Payton as GM has proven, that you can have all the assets in the world, you can make all the splashes in the world you want, but if there's one thing you have to accommodate for, it's the fact that you have money, and you cannot waste it so recklessly. You wasted $245 million to a mediocre mid-30-year-old quarterback who might not even finish his contract, and you're also giving up a first-round pick for a head coach who hasn't coached in 2 years since Drew Brees retired.
Right.
So, are they trying to
nuts.
turn the clock? They're fucking crazy.
Yeah. And they gave up a first-rounder on Wilson on top of it.
Oh, yeah. And that first-round pick, in case you're wondering, that first-round pick was from the Bradley Chubb trade.
Right, which hurts them even more.
So, yeah, and get this. Imagine they trade that pick to the Raiders for Derek Carr into New Orleans.
Oh, boy.
God damn it. That would be a lose-lose situation.
Yeah, seriously.
I swear to God, Tom, I have never been this claustrophobic about an NFL franchise in the modern era than the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, and I thought, and then when they had Belichick talk about how he chewed Brady's ass out more than anybody, I mean, I can understand that, but at the same time, Belichick hasn't done anything without Brady. So it almost makes you wonder now what's going to happen with Peyton now that he doesn't have Drew Brees at the helm. Only time will tell.
Yeah, really. Broncos are so dumb. Seriously. You are giving up so much value of your identity. They were so bad in this QB position since Peyton Manning retired. That's how bad this is for Denver.
Yeah.
Because if there's one thing about Denver we've learned is outside of Elway, the Broncos have had a really bad draft class of quarterbacks throughout their history.
Right.
Outside of Manning and Elway.
Right. And most notable was Tim Tebow for all the flack he got.
Tim Tebow.
I remember that whole thing.
Oh yeah, God. I remember that. I always thought he was overrated, but he is basically. Yeah. But whatever. But no, the problem I'm pointing at here is Denver is so reckless with money. Like, it's almost hard to compete with them, of the most incompetent organization with the Jets. If you are this bad and you're rivaling the Jets for worst spending team in the league and the Commanders of all people, there's like the Commanders, the Jets, the Bears. You're spending money. Yeah. I forgot to mention, New Orleans is another fuck fest because think about.
And of course, Chicago picks number 1 this year, so.
No, not even that. It's more of the Saints gave up their first round pick this year, which is number 10. Guess who has that pick? Take a wild guess. Take a wild guess who has that pick.
Trying to remember right off the bat.
I'll give you 3 chances. Go ahead. I know who it is.
All right. So either Chicago.
Nope. It's not Chicago.
It's not Denver.
It's not Denver.
And I don't think it's San Fran.
It's not San Francisco. The answer is the Eagles.
Oh, God.
Yeah, the Eagles have the 10th overall pick, which originally belonged to the Saints.
And they're in the Super Bowl.
And they're in the goddamn Super Bowl.
Man, they hit gold right there.
Oh,
and they have a legit shot at winning the Super Bowl and having a top 10 pick.
That's a good thing.
That's a good situation to be in. Even if they lose the Super Bowl, they still have a top 10 pick, so you're still building your team.
Could you imagine if the Eagles trade up in the draft and get the first overall pick,
Oh,
which I don't think
good
they will,
lord.
but
I don't
oh
think they
my.
would do that, but either way, if that were to be a scenario, oh, New Orleans, you just shot yourself in the foot big time.
Well, New Orleans is already dumb because they got a first. I mean, it's
Right.
nice they got a first round pick from Denver from Sean Payton, but what's dumb is now they're potentially trading that pick to Vegas in a deal for Derek Carr.
Yeah. Oh, Lord.
This
Football
is so
purgatory, man.
bad.
Yeah.
This is so
Football
bad.
hell.
Honestly, that this is so like stupid and like
Yeah.
compensation. If I were a GM in the NFL or any professional sports league, I would never spend that kind of money.
I wouldn't either. I wouldn't either.
No. And if it was my own homegrown player, sure, I would. But if you're trading 9 assets, including 2 first-round picks, the 9th overall pick, which was Charles Cross, and the 5th overall pick, which is going to be who we're going to find out this year, and then on top of all that, you trade another first for Sean Payton. Oh
It's
my
insanity.
God, they are so stupid. They are so bad. And they're throwing away first-round picks like it's executive hot potato.
Right. And you can't be doing that.
Yeah, so basically they gave up 3 first-round picks for Russell Wilson and Sean Payton.
Yeah. And Wilson's washed up, so.
Yeah, so Denver's not in a good position by any means.
No, they're definitely not.
No.
Oh,
But it's just
all I can say, yeah, good luck to them. They're going to need it for the next 5 years.
Oh, God damn it.
But we'll end on a good note, though. So, Super Bowl 57 will be coming up this Sunday. And, of course, it'll be in Arizona. And it comes down to the Chiefs versus the Eagles. And all I can say, it's going to be a battle of good offenses. I will say Philly's got probably the best defense out of the two. My gut feeling and we were talking about this a little bit earlier today, but my gut feeling, I think Philadelphia wins their second Super Bowl in the last several years.
I agree. I think Philly is a better team offensively and defensively than Kansas City.
Yeah.
Kansas City, I think, is just – I think the whole thing as a whole rides and dies on Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it comes down to. And Andy Reid openly admitted it today that Patrick Mahomes is not 100%.
Right. Yeah, he had that ankle injury that he ended up suffering, and he still played through it. But at the same time, that's not going to be 100% by any means, especially when you get like that type of high ankle sprain. So at least on a good note from Mahomes, he didn't have to have surgery or have anything done with it. But at the same time, he probably will not be as effective. And you know how sometimes these injuries happen. Sometimes they'll take the shot of painkillers just to numb it up and try to be more comfortable. But at the same time, I also look at Kansas City's line overall, and I mean they're pretty banged up, and they don't have as many weapons that they can go to as Philadelphia has. And I almost have to say, in a way, Jalen Hurts might be a better version in some ways of Mahomes. In terms of the run game specifically, and he's got the arm on him. But Philadelphia has the running backs to go along with it, which I think they're stronger than what Kansas City has. But defensively, though, the Eagles own the Chiefs
by far, statistically.
The very strong defensive team, and to see what they did against San Francisco. Now, granted, San Francisco was down to like their 4th string quarterback, but San Francisco had no answer for the Eagles.
No. And it's also going to be the first Super Bowl where 2 active brothers in the NFL are playing against each other. Jason Kelce versus Travis Kelce.
Yep.
And this is also the first Super Bowl with 2 black quarterbacks playing against each other.
Right. Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out. I mean, Hurts has really taken a huge step forward in his playing in the last 2 years. I mean, he's really made some significant strides, and he's starting to climb up and really starting to reach, what his potential can be. It kind of reminds me how Josh Allen was like his first season to his second season, really made that big leap, and Jalen Hurts has done the same thing. He's taken that really big step forward first year to second year, and in Philadelphia, they've done a really strong job building that team, and I was really impressed with them defensively, how they played San Francisco, because San Francisco, whatever they tried to scheme, they had no answer. There was just no options that they could work with. Now, Granted, you go to your 4th string quarterback, all you're going to do is practically run the ball. But even still, San Francisco's defense had nothing against the Eagles. They had no scheme, no protection. I mean, they literally let the run game totally destroy them.
Right.
And Hurts didn't even have to do much.
No, he did, and he's surrounded by a good offensive line. They got a Miles Sanders is having a great year, and even though I'm not the biggest Miles Sanders fan, but I have to give credit where credit is due. That's for certain. But I think it's going to come down to who makes the first big mistake. Is it going to be Kansas City or is it going to be Philadelphia? Like that's going to be the big question.
Yeah.
So, but I think at the end of the day, I think the Eagles are going to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think so too, and and good for them because I mean they've been building a very good team for several years now. But here's the one thing that really stood out with that 49ers and Eagles game that took place 2 weeks ago. Altogether, the 49ers were only able to put up 164 yards of total offense on the Eagles, 83 passing yards, 81 rushing yards. What does that tell you?
That's not good enough.
No. And the Eagles, they put up 121 passing yards, 148 rushing yards, 269 total yards of offense.
So that's what I don't understand. How was San Francisco on such a monster streak towards the end of the year when Brock Purdy arrived? And obviously he came in out of emergency status. But how was it that they were so on fuego throughout that second half of the year and then all of a sudden fell flat on their face and they're in this conference championship?
That's what I'm wondering. And I don't know what it was, if it was just... It's like a tough read because, I mean, the Eagles totally exposed them. And I didn't expect it to be that much of an ass-kicking, but it turned out to be that way. They ended up winning 31-7. And the thing I have to wonder is, like, is San Francisco's defense really as good as they say it is? Or was it just the offense just took a total meltdown once Purdy was out? I mean, well, I think, it's tough to say.
Like, I think to be fair, Purdy did get injured. He had that same injury Allen had earlier this year in Week 9.
Yeah, the UCL.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Britt and I were at that game. So, no. So, for Purdy, for him to get UCL surgery, he's out now for 6 months, and he should be ready to go by training camp. But Allen is very lucky that he didn't have to get surgery, and he might consider it right now. I mean, he doesn't necessarily have to get surgery, but maybe just an off-season of rest I think will do the trick for him. But Purdy's in a different situation because he's now going to possibly lose some of his mechanicalism on his throwing arm, especially if, God forbid, he's the starting quarterback next year because there's no guarantee that he's the starting quarterback next year.
At this point, there isn't. And prior to that game, San Francisco was saying he is the starter next season. So now that's up in the air. But seeing that hit, though, I mean, Purdy landed on that arm pretty hard compared to what Allen did. So I think it was more of a severe hit that he took. But yeah, I was just surprised that San Francisco's defense just couldn't step up.
I mean, Josh Johnson was bad. Christian McCaffrey had to come in as like a third-string quarterback. So San Francisco was playing on one leg this entire game.
Yeah.
And everybody got injured from left and right. So, I mean, I do like the 49ers. I'm not angry that I'm disappointed, but I'm not angry because they did have a good run in spite of all the shit they've had to deal with.
Yeah.
But I do have to give them credit for that, though. Brock Purdy, I think, played his ass off, but he will not win. But he will not win the MVP. As far as like offensive rookie of the year, he will not win it.
Yeah, I don't think he would at this point. But I mean, Shanahan did a good job given the situation. I mean, he even went through 4 quarterbacks in a total season. I mean, that doesn't happen, and he still had the team winning.
Absolutely, and again, San Francisco was really banged up going into the Philly game, and losing Purdy sucked, especially with him not being fully healthy. So, I mean, whatever the Niners have to do in the offseason, that's their due.
Yeah.
That's all I can really say.
Yeah.
Same with Cincinnati, but Cincinnati's in a different situation because they fucked up big time.
Yeah, they did. And good old Eli Apple, how about the nice little quote from Travis Kelce, know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni.
Exactly.
Yeah, he learned the hard way. And even Shady was telling him that he's done nothing in the league.
Exactly. And he's also going to be remembered for giving up the game-winning touchdown at Super Bowl 56 to Cooper Kupp.
Yep. So...
I will say that, though.
Yep. One of the most overrated first-round picks.
You know what? Good riddance to that asshole. Because I'm really glad, though, he got exposed for the fraud he is again.
Yep.
So I'm very happy about that. But the bottom line is that this is going to be one of those games where I think it's going to be very, very close. And it's going to come down to the wire. But if anything, I'm picking the Eagles to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that would be my take too. I think it's going to be probably a fairly close game, but I think the Eagles take it. They just have more firepower, and the thing
Yeah,
to watch is the defense because the Eagles have a much better defense right now, and that's going to be one of the biggest things I think they rely on.
absolutely. I definitely think that's a possibility for sure.
Yep, 100%. So with that, it's another show. So what we'll do is we'll come back, of course, next week. We'll go over at that point. We'll go over the Super Bowl. We'll be able to tell you our thoughts about it, who won, and then of course we'll have some more Sabres news at that point too. Because now that the All-Star break is over, which
Yep.
we don't have to worry about that disaster anymore, because that was an absolute crap All-Star break that they had with
God.
everything going on.
Yeah, that was stupid. Honestly.
Yeah, but at least we'll have hockey season now to talk about, and then we'll finally have the NFL draft at some point. So with that, we're gonna get out of here. We appreciate you joining us for another week. So of course, as always, take care of yourselves and each other. We'll see you soon.
Yes, you will. See you later.